Haas. Kim is executive producer, host, and creator of Afro-Latino Travels with Kim Haas, a travel show celebrating the African influence in Latin America. Thank you very much for being here with us today, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Mahalo.
All right. Kim, you have a presentation for us today, so I'm going to stop sharing so you can.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Thank you all, and thank you so much. So I have great fond memories of Hawaii, and I'll may share a little bit just in just a few minutes. But it's a real treat, and I appreciate it's a real pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon. So, or this, I guess, still morning for you all. I'm right by New York and New Jersey, so it is evening. But anyway, so I'll get started. So I have something to share with you all. And it starts with this woman. So the woman on your screen, her name was Cassie Keith. And she grew up, she was born in 1912, 1913 in South Carolina. And so at that time, South Carolina was, the United States was under Jim Crow segregation. And she had a very hard life. Her father was in and out of her life. Her mother died by the time she was 10, and she basically raised herself. And later on, I would ask her, many years later, I would ask her, what was her life like? What was her childhood like? And she wouldn't talk about it. She wouldn't tell me about her childhood. And I really do believe that that was because my grandmother's, growing up, her life was just so incredibly difficult and challenging. And at that time, under Jim Crow segregation, people of African descent weren't able to make basic decisions about their lives, where they went, who they talked to, when they did any kinds of thing. All of that was really, a lot of it was controlled. And so I have so much respect for my grandmother because she had, despite all of that, I love this about my grandmother, and she's passed on, but obviously her spirit is with us, I believe. She had this incredible wanderlust, and she loved people. And so she didn't let her early childhood stop her from loving life, stop her from loving people and getting out in the world. And if she were on this Zoom now, she would try and hug you all, because she was just that kind of person. She had that kind of spirit. And as soon as she met you, she'd give you a big hug and a kiss. She'd call you Puddin'. That was just the kind of person that my grandmother was. And so she took me to Mexico. That's kind of how I got started on this journey of loving languages and starting off with Spanish. She took me to Acapulco, Mexico when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And that trip absolutely changed my life. And I remember I was in the hotel lobby in Acapulco, Mexico, and someone, a complete stranger, taught me and asked me, do you want to learn how to count in Spanish, uno a veinte? And so, yeah, sure. And from that moment on, I was hooked without a doubt, wanted more Spanish, more language, more travel, more culture. And so I'm here. Obviously, thank you to Rosa and HALT, yes, and all of you. But the reason I'm here is because of my grandmother and that complete stranger, and how both of them changed my life without a doubt. And so from that moment on, as I said, I wanted more language and culture. Speaking of Hawaii, my grandmother took me to Hawaii when I was probably about 10 or 11, maybe 12. And I just had an incredible time. So that was my first trip to Hawaii. And so I always feel this connection to the islands. And then years later, I actually did get married in Hawaii. So I feel a really particular pull to the islands, and hope to be back next year, actually. The islands have a special place in my heart for sure. But I say that to say that my grandmother, what I loved about her spirit, and she had a big spirit, big energy, big love of life, is that she didn't let her upbringing stop her. And so she shared that, and I think hopefully passed on some of that wonderful spirit to me. And so I went on to study Spanish in middle school, high school, graduated, went on to college, lived in Spain junior year, and I lived with the Pantoja family in southern Spain, in Sevilla, La Maravilla. Anybody been to Seville, or anybody from Spain on the Zoom? Yeah, okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, so had a great time in Spain. And then I started, and I had in college, started studying just a little bit about the African influence in Latin America, but not a whole lot, but I was interested in it. And then I came back from Spain, and I'm from Philly. So go Phillies, because they play tonight, if any sports fans out there. And the Eagles, I'm a big sports fan as well. So, so I came back to Philadelphia, and I started meeting all these people who were from Latin America. And I got involved in an Afro-Latino organization. And I had a friend who was from Venezuela, and she looked like me. And then I had another friend from the Dominican Republic who looked like Edgardo, like he could be my brother. And I wound up going to Venezuela and Caracas, and Evelyn, who's from Caracas, she referred me to her brothers. They look like my brother. And I said, wait a minute. And then I started traveling to Brazil and Puerto Rico. And as I said, the Dominican Republic and all these countries in Latin America, and to Cuba. And I'm seeing all these people who look like me. And then I turn on the television, and I actually worked at Telemundo for a while, and I see no one who looked like me. I see Kevin's like, yeah. So you're meeting all these people in your travels, writers, artists, musicians, dancers, incredible people who are sharing and maintaining the tradition of their culture, keeping it alive, sharing with children. And it's phenomenal. And I'm absolutely captivated and wanting to learn more. And then I turn on the television, Telemundo, Univision, and there's nothing, absolutely zero. You see no one who looks like any of the incredible people that I started meeting on my travels. And so eventually I come up with this idea of wanting to share some of these stories of these people that I'm meeting. And so I'll get to that in a little bit, but that's how all of this kind of developed. So when we talk about, the African influence in Latin America, it's these women that I think about. And I don't know if anybody on here is Brazilian or has been to Brazil. Anybody? Any hands? Anybody been to Brazil? I know mostly Spanish, but you had some time. Okay. Well, these women for me, first of all, are gorgeous. And they are not the picture of Brazilians. But when you think about Brazil, and you think about Latin America as a whole, Brazil is at least 52% people of African ancestry. So the great majority of Brazilians look like them, look like me, or shades in between. And so I wanted to make sure that when I put together the show and when I talk to teachers and groups, we start to think bigger about what it means to be Latin American and who gets to say they are Latino. Because it can be someone of European descent, but it can also be these women. It can be someone of Asian descent. It can be someone who's indigenous. And so I want us all to start thinking, if we're not already, thinking bigger about Latin America, more inclusively about who is Latin American. And these women for me are just fabulous. And I want to keep shedding the spotlight on these people who otherwise we just don't see them. And so how did all this get started? Well, through the transatlantic slave route. And that's those 300, 400 years when people of African descent were taken from Africa, and mostly what is the western part of Africa. So now there are countries like Nigeria, even Angola, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and then forcibly taken to the Americas. So Central America, so what is now the United States, North America, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. And during that time, I don't know if you all have a sense of how many people were taken forcibly on that Atlantic slave route. Anybody have an idea? Has you seen the stats? Approximately, researchers estimate that 12 million people survived the transatlantic slave route. That's 12 million people who had hopes and dreams and desires, had families, and wanted the same things that we want now centuries later, right? For our families, for our communities. And that people who had dreams and desires. And that doesn't include perhaps 3 million people who didn't survive the slave route, that crossing, that very treacherous crossing. But that's how we see people of African descent in the Americas. That's how they arrived. That's how they were forcibly brought to the Americas. Because we know the story, and a lot of times we think about the United States, but the great majority of people of African descent were actually brought to, as I mentioned, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. Okay. And then here you have another picture, and you can see again those countries, the numbers of people, and where they were brought to specifically. So when you talk to people and you say, oh, you know, they're Afro-Latino, or you talk about the numbers, the population, we're talking about at least a third. So at least 1 in every 3 Latin Americans has at least some African ancestry. 1 in 3. So it's a significant portion of the population that in general is being left out. As Elizabeth said, you know, you don't see people 3% of children's books feature African Americans. And I think the Latino population, when you're looking at Spanish textbooks, I've seen anywhere between 6% up to 10%. I don't know what you all, if you all have numbers on those in terms of, you know, in Spanish textbooks, the numbers and the times that you see kids who are of African descent, but it's pretty small. So that's why I want to just share that with you and remind us that the people of African descent are a significant portion of Latin American history and the population. And so speaking of the population, I know we were talking earlier, there's some, I think the first special guest that we had to view was Gabriela from Costa Rica, Pura Vida. And this is a picture of some gentlemen who were working on the railroad and the banana industry in Costa Rica. And so when we talk about the African influence, you know, my interests are around the arts and culture in particular. But people of African descent were involved in every single aspect of Latin American history and culture. They touched it. They were involved in it. Basic infrastructure. This is the banana industry, which so much of that in building the railroad in Costa Rica was built by people of African descent. The Panama Canal, Rosabel from Panama, the Panama Canal, so much of that was built by people of African descent. And even during building of the Panama Canal, you learn that there were people that they were paid differently. So people of African descent were paid in silver coins, and people of European descent were paid in gold coins. So even during then, there was a segregation of the races of people, and people were viewed differently. This is the Panama Canal, and these were some workers, a lot of them coming from islands around the area, Jamaica, Barbados, coming to Panama, looking for that, you know, as we call it now, still that dream, the American dream, or the dream, you know, immigrant dream of making it, of finding work, of supporting families. They had that same dream. It still lives on. And this is, we'll take a little short trip around Latin America. This is what I like to call them, the dynamic duo. I don't know if there are any Cubans on here or anybody who's been to Cuba. Anybody? No? Okay. So I like to call Alejandro and Dania the dynamic duo because I just love them. And if you've been to Cuba, and I've been to Havana a couple times, a lot of the Cubans in Havana look just like them. Look just like them. But when you watch television and you see someone who's Cuban, that's not the picture you see. But a good percentage of the population in Cuba are brown and Black people. And these folks are amazing. You can see their smiles, their energy. They are musicians, super talented and creative. And I want us to, again, I think one of the reasons why I love sharing this is because I really want us to think differently about who is Latin American and what does that mean? And to think in the particular countries, because they're Cuban. And remember, there's a significant portion of Cuba's population is of African descent. Okay. Puerto Rico, anybody from Puerto Rico? Or any Puerto Ricans, or have you been to Puerto Rico? Was anybody at AATSP? I see Elizabeth, was that Kevin? Yeah. Anybody, were you all at AATSP? Okay, good. So this is a picture that I'm with Jesus Cepeda, and he is a bomba musician. And bomba is native to Puerto Rico, to the island, and it's the form of music and dance. And it was started by Afro-Puerto Ricans who were enslaved. And just like so often, dance is a form of communication, of sharing messages and stories and talking about the news of the day. And that's how Afro-Puerto Ricans communicated with each other. And so Jesus has a great story because his father, Rafael Cepeda, I like to say, was his own social media platform. So before there was TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, this is many, many years ago, Rafael Cepeda would walk the streets of Puerto Rico, San Juan, the capital, and share the glories and importance of bomba. He was working and just walking the streets to keep the tradition alive. And because of Rafael Cepeda and his wife and Jesus's family, bomba's really now thriving. And so you see it, you hear it played throughout Puerto Rico. It's played, and people perform it throughout the United States. But that was because of the dream of one man and his super commitment and dedication to preserving an art form. And so I always have such honor and respect for Rafael Cepeda and the Cepeda family for just keeping this important part of Puerto Rican history and culture alive. Okay, I asked before about Brazilian, so I don't think if no Portuguese teachers on here, but that's okay. This is in Niterói, right outside of Rio. And I'm with, are you all familiar with quilombos or palenques in Spanish? Kevin, yeah? Yeah, okay. Well, quilombos are similar to palenques in Spanish in that they were the communities founded by runaway enslaved. And in Brazil, they're called quilombos, and there are many of them throughout Brazil, and they are often really self-sustaining. And so the communities get together and they teach their culture, and it's about preservation of culture and feeling good about being Black, because unfortunately, so often, not just in Brazil, but in Latin America, you don't get that message. And so the communities really work to preserve their culture and their history and give their members a sense of pride. And so I'm with one of the leaders of the Quilombo do Grotão, which is right outside of Rio. And they were performing samba music that day. It was really amazing. And I had feijoada, if you're familiar with feijoada, the black bean stew. It was just, I can taste it now. And this is several years ago. So it was pretty fantastic. So that's right outside of Rio. And this is a gentleman named Antonio. And he worked at the Marriott where I was staying in Rio on Copacabana Beach. And I titled the slide, A Gentleman in Rio, because I want people to think about him as a gentleman. Because so often, and he told me, he has this, you see this great smile. He was just that way every day when I saw him in the hotel. Just a lovely human being. And he told me how he'd walk the streets and people would walk the other way. They'd grab their purses, and how hard it was for him being a Black man in Rio. And I want to share this picture again because I just want us to really think about, because when we see pictures of Brazilians, we see Giselle, Tom Brady's wife, right? And we see all these other people, but we rarely see people like Antonio. We rarely see Black Brazilians, but they by far constitute the majority of the population. And I always think about him and hope that he has a chance, just like I know you all do, inspire your children and your students, that he will have a chance to live out whatever his dreams and desires are. And my concern is that knowing about Brazil and Latin America, and frankly, the racism in these countries, will he have a chance to do that? But I think the teachers and you all make such a great difference by being much more inclusive And I know things are, you're making a difference and things are changing. But I just want us to really get a look at the people of Latin America who we don't see. And these are 3 women from Mexico. And, Mexico has, and you all, may not know this, a significant Afro-Mexican population. The Afro-Mexicans of Costa Chica in particular, in Oaxaca province, in Guerrero, have been in Mexico for 500 years. Let me go back. 500 years. And it was only just 2 or 3 years ago when they were finally counted on the census. So the Mexican census had not counted Afro-Mexicans ever. Think about what that means. If you are not counted on a census, it means you don't count. You don't get the resources, you don't get the attention. And many Afro-Mexicans say that when they travel to other parts of Mexico, people think they're immigrants. People don't think they're from Mexico because Mexico hasn't taught Mexicans their own history. And so I encourage you all, when you get a chance as teachers and as Spanish teachers, to open this up. And let's be more inclusive about who do we feature. If we show someone who's Mexican, or we talk about a Puerto Rican writer, if we talk about someone who's Brazilian or Colombian, because remember, 1 in 3 Latin Americans has African ancestry. And this is Carla Taylor, and I just show this for Pura Vida. Anybody, any of the Ticos, if they're still on, or anybody out there. Carla Taylor is an amazing woman, and she is someone that we met on a trip to Costa Rica. And she does a lot of work in preserving Costa Rica's kind of natural environment and touring and sharing really all the glory of Costa Rica and the beauty of it. And Costa Rica has become so well known as an environmental a country that really works to preserve its, environmental heritage and resources. And so Carla Taylor is an Afro-Costa Rican. And I share that because I want us again to remember that there's a portion of Costa Rica's population that is Black. And they came there, in waves. There's as enslaved, and then again later on, looking for work and working on the Costa Rican Railroad. And this little boy, I love this little boy. I love his smile. I think he is the cutest little kid. And I've never met him, but I just think the picture is so great. And I wanted to include it. And I love to show it because I see him as, I believe, the promise of tomorrow. And I think that with the work that you all are doing in terms of inclusivity and changing the dynamics, changing how we see and when we think in Spanish and we talk to one another, that hopefully he can be included because he's from Guatemala. And in Livingston, Guatemala, I don't know if any of you have been to Guatemala, but in Livingston, Guatemala, there's a Black community, they're Garifuna. And the Garifuna are all along the coast in Central America. And he's part of that community. And he's Guatemalan, es Guatemalteco. And so when we think about, again, Guatemala, can he please be someone that you would consider showing? And so I want his future to be as big, as bright, as what I'm sure you all want for all of your students. A big, bright future where there are no limits and where he can be whoever he wants to be. And I hope that things, will continue to change in Latin America so that this little boy and all the little boys and girls in particular who look like them will have a real opportunity. And we're just coming up on the end here. This is, because I'll get into this in just a moment. This is a picture of me and Selvin. He is appeared in one of the segments of my show in Costa Rica. And Selvin is a renowned chef in Costa Rica. He's on the Caribbean coast, his restaurant in Puerto Viejo, which is about an hour or so from the Panama border. And he's a fantastic chef and just an absolute delight. So hopefully if we have a minute, I'm going to share a segment of the show with Selvin. He was a lot of fun. and talk to you a little bit about cuisine, because I know there are ways to, talk about and share cuisine with students to get them excited about history and culture. And we just finished shooting in Cali, Colombia. Are there any Colombians on here? Anybody, or anybody been to Colombia? No? Okay. So this was just shot in August in Cali, Colombia. Cali is like considered the capital de salsa. So salsa is played, wherever you go. It's an amazing city with a significant 60 to 70% of the population is of African descent. Look like this woman. This was in Buenaventura, which is north of Cali. And she's a midwife. And we had an incredible filming with the midwives of Cali. I said it almost made me want to be pregnant again, almost. But it was, but I said almost, but it was amazing. And I learned so much from them and how they're working to preserve the culture of midwifery. And in Cali and in Colombia, people look down on it for so long. And so it's kind of had this almost kind of secretive, kind of under the radar. But people are starting to learn about it, more about it. People tell me they come from all over to receive the services. And let me tell you all that if you, especially whether, if you're a pregnant woman and you're looking for how to be cared for when you're pregnant, it was an absolute, I can only imagine after having been in, if you're in their care and you're being, treated by them while you're pregnant, you can't help but think that your baby at least is going to have a great start, because they were so loving, so caring. The music was inspiring and joyful, and they just consider themselves as kind of a conduit of their ancestry. It's just beautiful. And so I thought that, any child who, any mother who's going through their care would be so fortunate, and that that their baby, at least beginning this world, would have a phenomenal start to their lives. So you'll be seeing those segments probably early next year. We're looking to edit and hoping to air the shows next year. So that's just a little bit of the Cali, Colombia shoot. So there you go. So that's the presentation. Do you have any questions?
Please unmute your phone. I mean, your microphones.
Have you been to any of these countries?
We are going to have to take the whole entire HALT to all of these countries as well. And yeah, Kevin went to Puerto Rico. We have been in Costa Rica as well. We are also I am taking my students to traveling in Latin America during the summertime so that they can see more, and also like a complementary, integrating more in the classes, and then going in summer times to can explore by their own eyes and say, oh yeah, this is what I saw in class. And it's been a good experience through it says on Imelda have it on her bucket list.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
And I think there's some really interesting comments in the chat. Thank you all so much. And I saw, was it Paula? I'm sorry, I'm losing about Paula. The power of images we choose to use in our classrooms. So I don't know if you want to say anything else about that, but thank you, Paula.
And then I think Yvonne also make a comment, very important subject of inclusivity in our classes, which is true. We integrating more culture in our classes, also engage more students to learn, and the passion to learn the second language. Great.
Absolutely. And I think, yes, go ahead, Rosa.
Yeah, Renee, you want me to read this, or would you like to over here about your comment? It's very beautiful.
Please.
Oh, you can read it.
Oh,
Okay.
Renee, please.
Hi.
Great.
Hi. Yeah, my grandmother influenced me a great deal as well. She was from Switzerland and spoke French and sang she could sing opera, but she didn't. She performed, she did make a recording, but she taught me the French song Frère Jacques when I was only 4. And then I realized my name was French, and I ended up traveling a lot. And I believe, you know, she was a big influence in that. And I went to Europe and including Switzerland and met all my relatives and, you know, so I just can relate to you because of that. But it's very eye-opening what you've said about the way that people are featured on television and the media, et cetera. And so you're doing a great thing, you know, it's fantastic what you've done traveling around like that. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you. You know what I'm getting, because I'm thinking about what you were saying about your grandmother, and I'm thinking about mine.
Yeah. I'm getting teary-eyed too. How weird.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling it. I'm so glad you had it's, you know, grandmoms are something, and
Yeah.
to have such special ones is really, it's
Yeah.
it's golden. Because I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing.
Sure. I
Okay,
think,
Kim, I would like to share a little clip of your job in here, if you allow me. If you
Sure.
stop sharing, then I can share. So
Okay,
they can
sure.
see your work. Yeah. All right, one moment. Everybody can see?
For some, dance is just a form of exercise or reserved for special occasions. But for Sharifa Crawford Clark, a professional dancer on stage and off, dance represents so much more. Shadi's style combines traditional Caribbean dance steps with African movements that truly celebrate her heritage. Vámonos. Hola, Shadi.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.
But where are we?
We are in Park, Spain, in the center of San Jose, Costa Rica.
It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a great place
It's
for
a great
dance.
place, yes.
¿Qué tipo de baile va a enseñarme hoy?
Vamos a hacer como un calipso caribeño.
Dice
como,
calipso.
como mover caderas.
Okay. Y usted, pero y cuando hablamos del Caribe, de los movimientos caribeños, ¿de qué estamos hablando?
Estamos hablando de una fusión de movimientos. Pueden ser afro, de África, obviamente, jamaiquinos y latinoamericanos, también tropicales. Como una fusión. Es una forma de cultura, entonces pienso que al menos en la parte afro, desde la opresión que se ha habido durante años, la danza ha sido una forma de unión entre familia, tribus y de liberación, una forma de ser felices y a pesar de las situaciones que tenemos en lo cotidiano, podemos expresarnos y ser libres y ser quienes somos en realidad.
Ok, muy bien.
Vamos a empezar moviendo las caderas un poquito de lado a lado, like, como dibujando un 8, like, un 8, un 8, para allá, para allá, para allá. Exacto. Vamos. Y cada vez más grande, más grande,
Okay.
más grande. Eso, muy bien. Ahora vamos a quedar solo para un lado. Vamos a sacar, igual, dibujando como un círculo.
Ok.
Círculo, para allá. Para allá, eso, muy bien. A eso le vamos a agregar unas manos que vamos a hacer como dibujando un sol. 1, 2, 3, 4. Más despacio los brazos. 2, eso. 3. Brazo. Para el otro lado. Brazo. Eso. Y ahora más rápido. Vamos al sol. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Y al otro lado. And now, shoulders. Yes. Con los hombros, shimmy.
Shimmy, yeah, shimmy.
Yeah, shimmy.
I like the shimmy.
Yes, I like it too. Easy. And that's it. Yeah.
Brava, brava.
Bravo.
I mean, this is just fabulous. It makes me smile.
Yes.
And you're always smiling. I love it. Yes.
Dancing makes me happy.
Yes. Tell me, what does dance mean to you?
Para mí el baile es un estilo de vida, la verdad. Es una forma de conocerse, de push yourself,
Yeah.
de amarse también y de dar a las personas algo, luz,
Amarse.
amarse, claro, claro. Uno se conoce y conoce los límites que tiene y también hasta dónde puede llegar.
De verdad, ha sido un placer, un gran placer.
El placer es mío. Ojalá que les guste Costa Rica.
Me encanta.
Gracias por compartir nuestra cultura.
Placer.
So that,
Wonderful. Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. I just wanted to say a little bit about that. That was, as you can see, the dance segment in the park with Shadi, and she was just wonderful. I mean, she just was so lovely and so positive and optimistic, and she was just a real joy. And when we finished filming that scene, I like almost again had like my eyes were a little teary because I thought about how lovely it was being in the park, being, you know, surrounded by nature, her beauty, just as a human being. And I thought about the, you know, long held preconceived notions and stereotypes about people of African descent not being able to be ballet dancers, not having the capacity and the physicality to, you know, to dance and perform ballet. And she just blows that out the water with her grace and her charm. And so there's a mix of emotions, I mean, all joyful, but I just thought about, you know, all these people in Latin America who have talent, creativity, smarts, ingenuity, who want to do great and are doing great things. And what a loss it is for all of us when we don't get to see them. And all we see, you know, again, on Telemundo and Univision, and I say it because I worked at Telemundo, is one group of people, and how absolutely limiting that is for all of us. Because then you don't meet the Shadis of the world and all the people and the Antonios and all those great people who make their cultures thrive and come alive. And so again, I, you know, hope that you all, the comments in the chat were fantastic. And I hope that this can really help us and inspire us to continue to share and be much more inclusive. I don't know if there are any questions or comments about that particular segment. Yes, Rosa.
I like the comment that the Rebecca shared with us. It looks like hula, she said.
It looks like what?
We find this, Rebecca.
Yeah, no, I said it looked like hula because when she was saying figure
Oh.
eight, we have those movements and it's very expressive. But I did have a question in the chat box too, is like, how do you meet your guests? Like,
I love to research. One of my favorite parts of the production process is researching. So we know we want to have, you know, a cooking segment, you know, right off the bat, you know, a travel show without a cooking segment, you know, is that a travel show? What, you know, or some food. And so we ask, who are the cooks, the chefs, the, you know, even the home cook that people may not know about. They don't have to be famous. I'm not looking for, but just someone who wants to give, you know, of themselves and keep their culture alive. And so we ask people, you know, for Costa Rica, we worked with the tourism board, but I asked Costa Ricans that I knew. For Colombia, it was the same thing. We worked with the Colombia Tourism Board, and, you know, we'd ask them for recommendations. You know, the internet, you just pop in there, you know, Afro-Colombian chefs, you know, and, you know, you get what you get. And then you start calling people, and I ask Colombians, you know, from Cali, where do you go? Or who do you like? You know, what restaurants? Where is there a home cook? And so that's a fun part for me, because I'm always learning about somebody new. I mean, new to me. They're not, you know, they're not new, but new to me. And so I always find that I love that part, the research.
thank you.
And I love hula. I love watching hula. It's great.
Thank you, Kim. Do you have the segment of the cooking segment that you're talking about?
Sure. Let me see if I can.
I'd like them
Get
to
that.
see this was a wonderful one too. She got so many, but She got this in Costa Rica. I love it. And then look at this one. Take a
Let's
look.
see. And thank you, Rosa, and thank you all. So let me see. Can you see?
The Caribbean hits you with all five senses here at
No, you
Cabina
can only
Selva
hear.
y Blanca. And this
I don't
land
know if
has
they can
been in
hear it.
Selvin's family for generations.
You
I don't
can't
know.
hear, no,
So from the concert of howling monkeys up in the trees to the ocean waves pounding at the shore yards behind me, the sounds of Costa Rica are
Don't stop sharing.
coconut that's drawing me to Selvin's kitchen. Let's go find out what's cooking. Vámonos.
I can't get in.
It's great to be here.
So for me,
We've heard so many good things about you.
I came over here, that was in 1980.
Okay, so let's wait that she finished with the folder. We only can see the folder, right? That's the same thing I'm looking at it. She got help in there. Let's see. Oh, you are muted. Okay.
Could you hear the video?
We can hear the video, but we can
Only here.
your folder.
Oh, you can't see it?
Yeah, because
No.
it's showing your
Oh,
folder.
okay. Let me see 1 second. I'm sorry, just a second.
You might wanna unshare first and then reshare the screen again.
There you go. And I'm gonna answer a little bit here. It says, do your guests usually know their African connections via food, dance, stories? Usually when I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it depends on the person. And some do, and some have a real sense, and then others.
The Caribbean hits you with all five senses.
I don't know. Could you hear that and see it?
No, we just hear it.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
And do you think the people you have encountered have learned things about African Americans from you?
Oh, I don't know about from me, but I think they follow and they watch what's going on in the US. So they absolutely know what's going on. I mean, other countries, I don't know if you all found the same thing, but they follow and know what's going on in the United States. And just to give you an example, we're just trying to get the video up. The Black Lives Matter movement, here in the US, it has, chapters and folks who are organizing in countries like in Cali, in Brazil. So there are chapters of that organization in those countries. So, there's, I don't want to just say it's all the US and people watching what's going on. I mean, it's reciprocal, but people in Latin America in particular, I found, they know what's going on in the United States. They know what's going on, particularly if they're of African descent and have a certain level of consciousness. They also know and follow what's going on in the US, and in particular, what's going on for African Americans in the US. That's my experience. Can you see now?
The Caribbean hits you with all five senses here at Cabina Selva y Blanca. And this land has been in Selvin's family.
We only hear,
You can only hear?
the screen is not shared.
The Caribbean hits you with
Okay,
all
one
five
second.
senses here
My
at Cabina
apologies.
Selva y Blanca.
Just click on the bottom where it says share screen,
Yeah, at the top.
or you gotta.
Maybe I just talk something. I just wondering, like Hawaii, what kind of ethnicities are not represented or showcased enough, or well? Just I was thinking, like Micronesians on this in this Hawaii, they're underrepresented. I feel. Then nobody understand them, and they feel. I think we need to bring them out to more through our classes, or I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I was having a presentation with Kevin. We was trying to highlight this. Remember Kevin in Georgia? We were talking about how you can find so many Afro descendants in different cultures, Japanese, Hawaiians, anything, Asian, any place in the world. You will find some of them. And then we came with some teachers, even college educators was asking us, how can we approach this subject in our classes. Remember, Kevin? And it was just as easy as something that is there, is normal, and it should be no fear, and to bring them to our classes. And also, how can we teach this the students to accept everyone as equal, that we are all equals? And it plays a lot of part of our curriculum to integrate more, let's say, the different cultures. So not just one picture that they can see all the time and think this is all exist. No, there are many, many colors, many, many faces, many, many language, all in culture. It's like many language in the same, in one culture, right? Or in different cultures. It's our job, I believe, to try to integrate a little bit at the time to our students so that we create this empathy that they need while they're growing.
It's not, it has to be optimized. You can click. Yeah, Rosa, maybe I can just send you will that work?
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
See if I can do that. Because it's, we're trying to share screen, but I don't know what's happening. Can you let me know if you can you see it on the screen?
Yes, now we can see, yes, it's there.
Thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
here we go.
And this land has been in Selvin's family for generations. So from the concert of howler monkeys up in the trees to the ocean waves pounding at the shore yards behind me, the sounds of Costa Rica are everywhere. But it's the smell of coconut that's drawing me to Selvin's kitchen. Let's go find out what's cooking. Vámonos. It's great to be here.
Also for me.
We've heard so many good things about you.
I came over here, that was in 1985, and I started a restaurant, and there was no light, there was no road.
Wow.
I had my sign put out on the beach. This is part of my grandfather's property, and they came in here in 1918.
Wow.
Yes.
So what are we going to make today?
Well, today the idea is to do some rice and beans some rundown.
So what is rundown?
Rundown is it's like a soup, but it's a stew with coconut milk. When we're growing up, my dad, if we're gonna do some rundown, my mom would say, okay, so you run to the farm and you get a banana. You run to the ocean and you catch a fish.
Yes.
You run over there and you get a breadfruit, and it's like running down. You run down the village over here and run down there, and then everybody come together. Some grated the coconut, some will be peeling the yam, some will be scaling fish and frying the fish.
So it sounds like that was a great way for your mom to get 14 kids out of the house.
Yeah, I get it. So
Okay.
This is the yuca.
Ooh. So you learned to cook from your mom?
Right, my mom teach all of us to cook. Yeah.
Oh, so the boys and the girls.
She had 14 chefs.
Yeah. So wait, what number are you?
Number 8, yeah.
Number 8? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So what's the secret to making a good rundown?
It's your ingredient,
Yes.
your coconut milk, and your fish.
And a lot of love, I think?
Right, it goes with that. Goes with that.
Wonderful.
So this is the
Okay.
coconut trash.
Oh, man, okay.
Do this so we get the milk from it.
Oh, can I try it?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, try that.
Oh, you can feel it, yeah. Actually feels pretty good.
It feels good.
Yeah. So it feels somewhat like sand.
Like sand. you
Well,
got
we
it.
are near the beach, right?
Right on,
Yeah,
so-
yeah. So this is how you make coconut milk.
The coconut milk and also the coconut oil.
Oil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You dump it in your hand and squeeze out the milk.
Okay. And then what do we do with this?
This coconut milk is going for the rice and beans.
Oh, for the rice and beans. All right.
Now we're gonna deal with the fish. So we cut this up and add some salt to it, and then we fried it before you add it to your vegetable. And here we have some more fish.
All right, more fish.
This is the marlin. We're gonna chop the rati. This is the rati. Now we're gonna strain the coconut milk.
Okay.
Here we go. So I have to wait until this oil heat up, then I add the fish to the oil. Okay.
So you're putting that in there.
Yeah.
Oh boy. This is some heavy stuff.
Okay, now we're gonna put the season into the rundown. Celery, some bell pepper.
Good, great color. Some garlic.
Gonna put 4 Panamanian pepper.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
this is like, these are the superstars
these
of
are
the,
superstars.
this
It's
is
gonna
it.
work right in.
All right. It's gotta be good. It's gotta be good. It looks great. Because, you know, anything fried anyway is gonna be
Right,
good.
yeah.
Okay. Let me try these beans. Mmm. This is gonna be delicious. No doubt.
Este es el famoso rondón, entonces vamos a. There you go.
Okay. Oh,
And
it looks
done,
beautiful.
yeah.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah, it's good fish. And it's right from outside your
Right
nose,
from outside,
right
yes.
here, yeah, next door.
Your mom would be proud.
Yes, she is proud of us.
She is, yes.
Yeah, she's proud. Having
Yes.
seen us having this nice rundown and
Yeah.
chatting about it and calling her name.
Call her name. Wait, what is your mom's name?
Anita.
Anita.
Yeah.
Anita.
Anita.
All right. All righty, so that was the segment with Selvin from the Limon, Costa Rica episode. And so if you haven't been to Costa Rica yet, Costa Rica, most people go to Costa Rica to the Pacific side, and that's where the great majority of tourists go. But along the Caribbean coast is where most of the people of African descent live, because they came in again from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, from Barbados, many of them to work in the early 1900s on the Costa Rican Railroad. And so, you know, one of the things that in one of the segments we talk with a writer, Quince Duncan, who's Afro-Costa Rican, and he's considered one of the country's most celebrated authors. Black, white, you know, Quince Duncan is just revered in Costa Rica. And so he says, and he talks about how in Costa Rica, when building the railroad in the 1900s, the about 5,000 people, when the first 5,000 people died and they were of African descent, building the railroad, and then the officials just stopped counting. They just stopped counting. So we still have no idea of how many people lost their lives building the railroad. And I try and tell, especially students, when you talk to them, you know, if you can imagine more, 100 some years ago, there was no urgent care. There was no, you know, go call 911 and get an ambulance. You're out in the middle of the rainforest, building a railroad with, you know, maybe some basic tools, but your bare hands. And that I feel like I owe a debt of gratitude to these 5,000 plus people who died building the railroad so that Costa Rica could thrive, so that the banana industry could grow, and so that people, except Afro-Costa Ricans, could move around within the country. Because in Costa Rica, Blacks helped build the railroad and built the railroad, and then they were limited. They could not move and they could not pursue other opportunities. So they were relegated to the Caribbean. So you think about it. So they gave their heart and soul and even their lives to build the railroad, but yet they were not able to move around within the country. So I just, you know, want to make sure that when I learn about these things, that I also acknowledge and share them, because I think they're so important. Again, to learn about how much people of African descent have contributed to Latin America. And it's not just dance and music, which I adore, and cuisine, but it's also the basic infrastructure of these countries.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking us in this inspirational virtual trip right now through Latin America with your experiences in travel with Kim Haas. As you find so many Afro-descendants in Latin America, I can assure how many educators can also use this information, but in other language and in other cultures, and be able to integrate these cultural connections in their classes. I don't have so many words in my head right now that emotional that I feel every time you can see your descendants either online, on the TV, in the classroom, everywhere. And this is what I use in my classes. And I'm hoping that with this information that you share with us today, inspire other educators as well to integrate that in their curriculum. So thank you so much for inspiring us today. And this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Gracias. Obrigada.
Gracias. Jim?
Mahalo.
Okay. Thank you so much again. All the talks today were wonderful and gives us a lot to think about of better including culture and everyone's stories in our classroom. So it's just been a wonderful program. And thank you again to all of our different presenters today. Well, we're at the end. And so we just wanted to remind everyone that we have evaluations and I put them in the chat for you. So we ask you to please fill out the evaluation form, give us your feedback from today's session. Also, if any of you need a certificate of attendance, if you fill out the evaluation form, after you submit, a link will come up and you can request your certificate of attendance, which you should get immediately. Hopefully this will work, but I think I've set it up now so that you will get the PDF emailed to you immediately. So check your emails for those. If you don't get them, just let me know. Okay, and then turning things over to Rosa.
Thank you, Jim. And well, dear members and guests, I hope everyone have enjoyed this 2022 HALT Symposium, Cultural Global Connections in the World Language Classroom. Thank you to our keynote speakers and presenters. And on behalf of our Fall Symposium Committee, I want to thank you for sharing this morning with us. And we will see you guys again in spring HALT Symposium. I'm sorry. I'm so emotional right now. My heart is in here. Thank you, Jim, Aya, Rebecca, for your support. Thank you, everyone, and mahalo. And I'm going to say something in our culture here in Hawaii. Ahui ho kako'u. I hope I did it right. Thank you.
Thank
so
you, Rosa.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Gracias, Rosa.
Thank you, Gina.
Saludos. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias por estar aquí, igualmente.
Thank you to everyone and aloha.
If I pronounce that correctly, I always mess with my learning language.
That was beautiful, Rosa.
I'm like,
Woohoo.
okay, I got it.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice job, you guys. Woohoo!
Great organization.
Woo.
Fantastic.
We did it. We did it.
Thank you.
That was
That
wonderful.
was a nice day. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kim.
Kim, that was,
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you,
Kim.
Thank
so
you
much.
all.
Great presentation.
yeah, it was wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for being so open and for what you do. It's making a difference.
Thank you for being so dedicated.
Yeah.
I
I
want
love
your
it.
job.
I know you have like the
I don't
best
know.
job.
You'll
Some
be
days
good
I
at
don't
that,
think you
Gina.
do.
I start seeing all their food. I'm like, oh no, wait.
And it is a cool job, but some days I'm sure you're like,
A lot of
maybe
traveling,
not.
a lot of
This
Thank you,
year's
Rosa.
actual. This year's actual has that food link too, with Jose Andres as the keynote.
I
Right.
saw.
Food is a great way to
Wonderful.
connect people, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and his work, the work he's doing with World Kitchen. Important.
Exciting.
Do you stop the recording?
Reed, do you have anything
No,
else
I'm
for us
going to
today?
do it right now.
Kevin, where do you teach?
Words of gratitude.